Good morning, and thanks for joining us. And our special guest is Sam Morgan from SW Morgan Fine Home Design, located in Utah. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Sam.
Oh, you bet. It's a good way to add some interest when you're stuck in your house working.
That's right. Yeah. For those joining us the first time, we're the Plan Collection. We're a broker that sells pre-drawn house plans online. And we've received hundreds of questions from customers regarding house designs, plans, requirements for building, and the like. All kinds of questions around building your own home. And Sam is one of the many designers that we work with throughout the country and is here to answer some questions for our customers. Sam, before we begin, how are you holding up in these times of social distancing?
You know, I think I was made for this. You know, I'm lucky. You know, I work from home, so I don't have an office to worry about. I don't have a staff to be worried about. Do I have work for them? I'm a one-man show, so you know, my commute is from my bedroom down 14 steps and across the hall to my office. And I was very lucky that, you know, things have been really, really strong here in Utah. And so I had plenty of work lined up, you know, current custom work for local clients before things started to get crazy with this virus. So I've got enough work just between my custom work here and my stock plan pre-drawn stuff with you guys that I'm doing okay. You know, I'm not worried too much yet. If it gets worse, I might start to worry a little more.
Right. Well, that's fantastic, and you are set up perfectly for this. You've come in, you know, before you're a trendsetter basically. So. So Sam, how did you get into design?
That I did this a little differently than a lot of people. You know, some, you know, kids dream of being an architect, or you know, or maybe a counselor tells them that might be a good career path for them. I went about it a little different way. So I grew up in the construction industry. My oldest brother is a builder. My next older brother and he have worked together for decades. And so as a teenager, I came up working for my brother as a builder and kind of got my feet wet there. When I was in my mid-20s, I started a construction business of my own, and I built homes and developed land right up through the Great Recession. And it was just a couple of years leading up to the recession, I moved to a really rural community where there were no architects, no designers, no anybody to draw plans. I mean, it was a very, very small community, and you were a good hour and a half, 2-hour drive to any bigger community that would have someone like me. So I decided, you know, what most people were doing was either buying plans online, which is great, or they were hiring one of the guys that worked for the local engineering firm or whatever to draw their plans at night. As a builder, I couldn't wait for, you know, 6 weeks for the guy that was doing it on the side to do it. So I bought some software and just self-taught myself as a builder, which was kind of nice. Those first couple of drawings I did, I found the dumb little mistakes that you shouldn't make. But I was the builder, so I could fix them right on site. And
right.
I'm actually today working on a small project that I'm modifying for one of my builder clients for his personal home. That he picked one of my pre-drawn plans, and it was one of those plans that I drew when I was a builder back in that time. It was one of the very first ones that I did, and I had to laugh and say, oh yeah, this is the one where my foundation and my main floor didn't match up. So anyway, so that's how I got into it. Self-taught as a builder. Then the Great Recession hit, and I just decided I don't ever want to go back to being a builder. And so I just kind of morphed into a full-time home designer.
Right. Well, that's really creative and different, and I think it's a great thing for the customer to have someone with such practical experience who's also a designer that can build something that is actually buildable. Because I've got to say, there's a lot of stuff out there that people buy and they can't build from it because it hasn't been really vetted that well. So that's a great thing. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Right. No,
Um,
it's, oh, go ahead. Sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say I have people occasionally that'll, when they find out that I used to be a builder and they're enjoying working with me as the designer, and they'll say, well, why don't you just activate your license again and build this for us? I'm like, no, thank you. I would love to introduce you to one of my fantastic local builders that I work with.
Right,
But no, I don't want to go back and renew my license and build your home. I don't even
right,
want to. I don't even want to build my own home again.
right, right.
So
Well, you've been doing it a long time, and you're obviously successful at it. Um, so that's one of the reasons we're talking to you. So why don't we take a question from our audience? We have a customer who loves a plan but wants to make some modifications. Um, what type of modifications can be done in the field, and what ones should be done by a designer before the plans go out?
that's a great question. And having been a builder that would do modifications in the field, I can easily answer things that are easy to do in the field versus, boy, that's going to require some work. Um, I had, when I was a builder, I had a foreman working for me, this real sharp kid, a guy I could just leave um, to build the home if I had to go on vacation or had to go out of town, whatever. When we would start a new job, his favorite saying to me was, are we building what's on the plans this time, or are you going to screw around with it? Because, sometimes you get a set of plans in front of you and an idea may pop in your head of, oh, hey, we could move that wall over a little bit. So my opinion as a former builder is simple things like, hey, this plan is perfect, but if we had 2 more feet on the master bedroom, it would be just exactly right. That is something that's probably easy enough to change in the field. You buy the plan, you meet with your builder and say, we bought this plan, but we really decided that we could use 2 more feet in the bedroom. Can we just move that wall? That's pretty simple. The builder can tell that information to the gentleman putting in the foundation, and problem solved. The one thing I would say there is, if you're in an area like me where everything is reviewed and stamped by a structural engineer, it's probably good to run that by the engineer first. Is it okay? Is it going to cause any problems if we move that wall 2 feet? Another simple, let's say you've bought a house plan that has a hipped roof on it, and you decide, oh, it would look nicer if we could put a gable on this one end. That's a fairly simple, and again, if you're in an area like me where most roofs are pre-manufactured trusses, that's a phone call to the company that's going to build your trusses. Say, hey, how hard would it be to put a gable on the end here instead of a hip? They're going to be doing their own engineering on the truss design, so fairly simple. Now, you want a 4-car garage instead of a 2-car garage that's on the plan you're looking at. That you should be going back to the designer and saying, yeah, that's a little bit more change than we want to make in the field. And likely you start making those kind of changes in the field, you're going to have a building inspector raise an eyebrow and say, wait a minute, that's a big change. That 2-foot extension on the master bedroom that you want, the building inspector probably would never even notice that you did it.
Right.
So,
right.
But you start adding garage bays or something like that. That's a little more than you want to be doing on the fly.
Right. Yep, I get it. And small things like changing doorways and changing like sizes of closets and things like that. Those are things that can be done in the field, correct?
Oh, absolutely. As long as, you probably want to be looking at the whole picture. Like, is this wall that I want to move a bearing wall?
Right.
And if so, what will that affect? So let's go back to the idea of just adding 2 feet to that master bedroom. Just the 2 feet is only part of the equation. You probably want to be looking at your floor spans. If you're doing like where I'm at, where most homes have a basement, you'd want to look and say, what does that do to our floor framing now? Are we now overspanned? So we have a floor that doesn't meet code, or a floor that's going to be bouncy when you walk across it.
Right.
So, and if you're working with a reputable builder, or if you're building on your own and you have some construction experience, those are pretty simple things to look at and just verify, yes, this isn't going to cause a future problem.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Well, all right. Appreciate that. That's good information. Let's go to the next question. What does a customer need to have to build their home besides the plans? We get asked about engineering, gas line diagrams, HOA approvals, site plans, things like that. What does someone need besides the pre-drawn plans that they're going to be getting from us or some other online, or you or some other online pre-drawn house plan supplier?
That's a great question, and I would answer that it's going to vary from region to region, or sometimes even city to city within your county. Where I'm at, most every city is going to require that it's reviewed and stamped by a structural engineer, a gas line diagram. If you're using a roof truss, then truss drawings that are engineered, manual D, J, and S calculations, which is part of the energy efficiency things. That's making sure your furnace is sized correctly, the ductwork is sized correctly, so you don't have just the guy using the rule of thumb. Oh, this is a 4-ton 4-ton AC house. They want to actually do the math using a software to calculate all that to make sure it's done properly. We don't want to have houses that have air conditioners and furnaces that are way oversized or way undersized. Mm-hmm. So those would be the main ones. I know that's not a requirement in every jurisdiction around the country. The manual D and J has been in the code book for several years now as a requirement, but not every place adopts that as a requirement. So best thing to do is check with, maybe before you buy a plan, a quick phone call to the city or county you're going to be building in and say, hey, I'm buying some plans. What else am I going to need besides just those plans?
Right. Okay. That's good advice. Thank you. Good information. Here's another question we receive repeatedly. Will the house fit on my property? What types of things should the customer know? Setbacks, zoning, height restrictions, any easements such as utility, things like that. What does he need to know to be sure that the house will fit on the building lot that he has or she has?
So that's usually one of the very first things that I'm checking when I have a new, custom client. Before I'll even start drawing what they want, I will get a copy of the plat for the property they're going to build on. I will draw it, recreate their plat on my computer with the required setbacks, with any utility easements, just so I know ahead of time, this house can be no more than 76 feet wide and 42 feet deep, or whatever it may be. If you're looking at buying a pre-drawn plan, that would be relatively easy. It would be the same kind of process that I go through redoing it on the computer. In most areas, you should be able to get a copy of the plat for your lot from the county recorder's office, or maybe the realtor that you're dealing with to buy it. Worst case, you got to get a surveyor involved. And having all of that information, let's say you get the plat from the county and it doesn't show the setbacks that are required, how far you have to be from the front and the rear and the sides. That would be an easy phone call to the city. Just ask, what are the requirements for that specific lot, and then do a little bit of math. If you find out your lot is 100 by 100 and you have a 10-foot setback on each side, well, your plan can be no more than 80 feet wide. If you have 25 front and rear, your plan can only be 50 feet deep. Those are things that I would recommend people are looking into and asking those kind of questions before they buy, so you don't end up disappointed when you find out that you bought a set of plans that are 6 inches too big. And
right.
Now 6 inches could probably be fudged a little bit, with your builder. Say, hey, we need to move this wall 6 inches to fit on our lot. But that's just some good questions to ask up front, so you don't end up in that situation and it doesn't become a problem for you later.
Right. So someone actually should have the property, they should have all that information and know, what all the parameters are before they actually before they actually buy a plan to put on that site.
I would think that might depend on how the market is in your region. For years, when I was a builder, I would just recommend to my clients to get with the designer. This before I was doing my own, I would have a guy I'd work with and say, let's just design what you want. We'll start working on a bid while you're out shopping for your land if you haven't bought it already. And that was easy for a long time because there was so many lots available in most areas that, if a client said, here's the lot we found, and the house plan they really wanted didn't fit on there, well, there's probably another lot 3 lots away that would fit. That's gotten a little harder for us around here because there's just such a shortage of available lots that now I'm telling clients, you should find the lot you want first, and then we design something that fits specifically, so we don't end up with a plan that we've designed or that you've bought that is bigger than the only lot you can find that you want.
Right. So that's a very good point. Very good point. It's very local. You're right.
Yes. In your area, it may be, oh no, there's hundreds and hundreds of lots available in really desirable areas. So pick out a plan, and if the first lot doesn't work, the next lot probably will, and it's a block away.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay, good advice. Thank you, Sam. So far we've been answering customer questions, but we'd love to know a little bit more about what goes behind the scenes. What inspires your designs, and maybe like who or what are your influences in terms of designing homes?
If I was to say what's my favorite, I have my favorite designs. And maybe some that does influence. I try to not have my own influence dictate what my clients get. And I tell all my custom clients, I'm not afraid to give you my opinion, but I got pretty thick skin, so don't be afraid to tell me your opinion sucks.
Right.
if you don't like what I like, because I'm not going to live in this house. But
right.
My favorites are typically European inspired. For years, some of my favorite designs, especially when I was a builder, were like the French country. Matter of fact, I built 2 homes for myself in the early 2000s that were French country inspired. Very steep roof pitches, wood shake roofs, a lot of stone, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Then I married a girl from Spain. And now one of my favorite designs is the Spanish architecture, tile roofs, stucco, stone, etc. Right. And when I build my next home, it will probably be a Spanish-inspired home. Number one, I really like it. Number two, that'll be a good way to convince my wife we should build a new home. So Um, excuse me. And those two are so dramatically different. You know, I mean, the Spanish style, very low pitched roof, lots of hips. The French country, very steep roof with lots of gables. So
Right.
they couldn't be more opposite. But
That's right. Yeah.
and again, I really will tell clients, and I'll point out, hey, what if we did this? You know, here's something I really like, but I'm never afraid to have a client say, yeah, but we don't like that. That's not what we want. I'm like, well, you're going to live there, not me.
Right, right. What is the proportion of your pre-drawn plans that come from past custom work versus designs that you just want to design for the sake of that, or that you think will sell, and you create them as pre-drawn plans from the beginning?
You know, I would say, so now that, you know, we've got a booming economy and you know, really busy with custom work, most of my stock plans that have been done in the last, you know, 6-8 years were a plan that I designed for a local client, and then we, you know, eventually offer them for sale. We try not to, you know, if someone here locally came to me and found one of my pre-done plans that was done for a client locally, I would want to really do a little research into where they want to build, because I don't want to sell that plan to, you know, person number 2 and find out they want to build 4 blocks away from the person I did it as a custom plan.
Right.
So I try and be careful about that. If they're building in an entirely different city, you know, 40 miles away, you know, it doesn't matter. Those two will never meet anyway. A lot of my pre-drawn plans came during the Great Recession. You know, there was no work to do. I was still a builder at the time, but I was drawing plans for myself. And when you got no job site to go work on today, you might as well be doing something productive. So I would sit in my office and just draw plans. So I would say probably half of the ones that you guys offer of mine were done in that time frame of, you know, 2008 to 2012, when there was just not much to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now occasionally I'll go through and go and find one of those old ones that's got a great floor plan but maybe an outdated elevation, and say, okay, let's, you know, if the modern farmhouse is what's popular right now, let's take this great floor plan and recreate it with a better updated elevation to give it that farmhouse look.
Right.
So I'll do more of that than I will spending a lot of time doing a completely new from scratch.
Right. Got it. That makes sense. Do you set time limits on yourself when you're in the design process? How long does it take you to, you know, design one of your plans from, say, idea to final stage?
You know, on a pre-drawn plan that's just going to be for sale, a typical plan like that, I could do in a matter of a few days to maybe a week. You know, just depends on how much time I have to devote to it. Sometimes I'll like to take a break from it and say, okay, I'm getting a mental block, and say, let's back away from it for a day or two and then come back. So, you know, anywhere from a couple of days to maybe even a couple of weeks I might spend on a plan for sale. On custom plans, it's totally different, because a lot of times that depends on the client's decision-making abilities as much as anything else. So
right.
I've had projects in the past that I've spent 2 years designing, because people, you know, just take time to think about it and they're not in any big hurry to build.
Right. Yeah.
So
I get that.
Luckily, that's not the normal. You know, for most things I'm doing, it's, you know, a couple of weeks.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Sam. That was some interesting stuff. Why don't we get back to a couple more customer questions?
Okay.
We find that most home plans in the Northeast, where we're from, come standard with a basement, as you said, a lot of yours do. And many homes designed in the southern states come with slab foundations. What would you say to a client who's on the fence about what type of foundation they would get? What are some of the things they should consider? Water table cost, obviously, what's going on in the surrounding area, but that doesn't necessarily rule out a specific foundation. So can you give some guidelines about, how you determine what kind of foundation is best for you?
Yeah, I would look first at probably what's most common in your area. Like here where I'm at, almost every home has a basement. The only times I do a crawl space or a slab is if we're in an area that maybe has a high water table. So it is really prohibitive to do a basement. But you hear people here talk all the time about not doing a basement is resale suicide. When you go to sell that home, because every home has a basement, you ought to have one. And
right.
I tell clients all the time that yes, there's some truth to that, but at the same time, don't design your house or don't build your house for the next guy. Build what you want and let the next guy make some changes. Now, obviously, you're not going to go and add a basement later, but personally, I'm not a basement guy. We have a basement in our house, but we never use it. We never go down there. So if I were to build a new house, it would probably either be a slab or a crawl space, or maybe have a partial basement, like for a theater room. But that would be my first thought, is to consult with people on what's most common. And then if it's most common to have a basement, maybe it's worth considering, even if you're just going to leave it unfinished, and let the guy down the road finish the basement off.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, that's good advice. What about like daylight basements, walkout basements? What are the differences between the alternate foundations, crawl space, daylight basement, walkout basement, that people would want to choose one over the other?
So that, typically is going to depend on the terrain of the property that you bought. If you've got a lot that has a decent amount of slope, then doing a daylight or a walkout basement makes a lot of sense. Now, this could go back to one of your first questions of what can you change in the field. Let's say you've bought a plan that's drawn as a full basement on a flat lot, and the lot you have has enough slope that 5 feet of the rear of the house is showing, so all of your windows on the back of the basement could be daylighted, no window wells, etc. That would be a fairly easy change to make with your builder. To say, hey, on the back of the house, we're only going to pour a 4-foot tall foundation and then frame the rest, so we have a daylight basement. That would be an easy on the fly. The walkout would probably, you could do that as well, depending on how much slope. Do you need a little bit of a retaining wall for some steps, et cetera, et cetera. So one nice thing that I'm doing now, it's a kind of a newer thing with my custom clients, is just recently found out that the software that I'm using to design homes, I can import topography data from Google Earth, and to determine what the slope of your property is. As long as Google Earth is fairly accurate, I can show people, here's how much slope there is. We should be considering a walkout basement or a daylight basement or whatever it may be. Come in very handy when we need to look at, does an 8-foot basement work? Because someone has a really steep sloping lot. When we can bring in that topography information, we can determine whether 8-foot basement is going to work, or maybe we have to go to a 9 or a 10-foot basement to get footings on good soil.
Right. Yeah, I never even thought about that. That you can do that as a field alternative. That's good information.
Right. I would think, again, it depends on how dramatic your slope is.
Hmm.
You may run into that situation I referenced earlier of, you're making some changes like that on the fly. Might be worth consulting with a structural engineer that those changes aren't going to cause any major issues.
Right.
Typically doesn't. In my experience, most of the times when I call an engineer with those kind of questions, sometimes the response I'm getting is, "Why are you calling again?" Like, why are you wasting my time with a dumb question? But
Right. Right.
when you're about to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on your dream home, it's worth that phone call. And if it costs you $100 for an answer.
Hmm. Right. That brings up a good point. A question we get a lot from customers is if they have to consult a local architect or a structural engineer, how much is it going to cost them to consult with the person?
Right. That's probably going to vary by region. Here where I'm at, for the most part, if you bought a set of plans online from you guys, you would just then take that plan to a structural engineer. Doesn't need to be, you could take him a paper copy, you could take him a PDF copy, you could take him a CAD copy, whatever you've purchased. With most structural engineers, that's not going to be a problem. On an average home, what would you say, Tim, an average size plan that you sell?
2,200, 2,300 square feet.
Okay, so on a plan like that here in my area, you could expect to spend probably, 1,000 to 1,200, maybe 1,500 at the most for a structural engineer to review and stamp and provide all the calculations.
Right.
Possibly cheaper if it's a fairly simple plan, a big square box, that's obviously going to be cheaper. So I would say, yeah, anywhere from maybe $800 to $1,500 is probably a good range, depending on the size and style of the home.
Right. Right. Yeah, because if you go down below 2,000 square feet, it'll get obviously cheaper. So,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Good information.
Most of the engineers I work with are just charging by the square foot. So,
Okay.
they're, if you're 1,200 or 1,300 square feet, it's going to be just whatever that proportion of whatever they charge per square foot is.
Right. Right. Okay. Thanks. Well, Sam, I can't thank you enough for speaking with us today. Thank you so much for your time. You've given us some good information and really enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about you as a designer and some of the thoughts that you had for our customers. So I really appreciate that. For those of you out there who would like to see some of Sam's great designs, please check out our website at theplancollection.com /house-plans/designer-161. And you'll see Sam's selection of plans that are on our site. And I can tell you, one is better than the other. So please do that. And thank you again, Sam, for your time. And until the next time, stay safe and stay distant from all your neighbors. All right. Thank you so much, Sam.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care now.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.